Bruno left home. Today would be a very important day. He had worked for 2 years at a construction company, and today he had to undergo a sort of exam to be promoted to a better position. The bosses had arrived from the capital to retire the old branch manager and appoint a new one. There were 3 candidates for the position, all of whom had prepared carefully. Each had to present a development plan for the company. Bruno had worked on his plan for almost a month. He was sure his plan was the best. He loved his job. Bruno had read a lot since he was a child. It was then that he decided he wanted to be a builder and was sure he would do high-quality work, not like those who were building a new building on his block. The children used to play on the construction site. One day, a slab swung over Bruno's feet. He tried to hold on but couldn't. He fell from a height of 3 meters. Debris had been dumped below, and there were large pieces of concrete at the bottom. He fell precisely on them. At first, he didn't even lose consciousness, and it didn't hurt either. Then fear came because he tried to get up, and that's when a sharp pain pierced his body. His friends were already running towards the site with the adults. 6 months in the hospital, 3 surgeries. Bruno barely understood what was happening around him. He just begged his mother to take him home. "Mom, please, I can't take it anymore, take me home." All she could do was cry and kiss him. Sometimes, his father appeared. He would sit by his bed and hold his hand in silence. After 6 months, they allowed him to go home for 3 months, but only temporarily. Bruno was already old enough to understand. He was 10 years old at the time. One morning when his parents thought he was sleeping, Bruno overheard them talking in the kitchen. He couldn't get up, but his mother always left the door open to hear if her son suddenly called out. "João, what are we going to do? He has surgery in a month, and we don't have the money to pay for it," said Camila. "So what do you suggest? Sell a kidney? Go ahead, find a buyer." "I'll sell," replied João. "You know it can't be like that. We'll have to think of something else." "Camila, we have to reschedule the surgery, that's all," argued João. "Are you crazy? Did you hear what the doctor said? Every month, the chances decrease," retorted Camila. There was a noise in the kitchen, as if the father had suddenly risen from his chair.
Camila, Amdoin Evrytinican.
"We've spent all the money, every last cent, do you understand? And the money we saved for the car? And the money we saved for repairs? Everything." "You understand, but no, you demand that I do more," said João. "I'm not demanding anything from you, João. It's just that I feel you don't care. Do you realize that our son might never walk again?" "I'm sorry." "Yes, I realize," replied João. "And you, what have you done to help him recover?" "Your accountant's salary isn't enough," accused Camila. The front door slammed hard. It was evident that the father had already left. Bruno heard his mother's footsteps approaching the room. He closed his eyes tightly, pretending to be asleep. The tears didn't want to come out. Every day, the boy hoped to be taken to the hospital, but as time went on, Bruno realized that his parents hadn't found the money and that he would be condemned to stay in bed forever. He tried to distract himself. He read a lot, so much that his eyes got tired, and his ears became sharp. At least, the boy could sleep quickly. Then, something happened that divided his life into 2 parts, before the betrayal and after. His mother, the person he loved most in the world, abandoned him. Everything happened at dawn. His mother entered the room dressed to go out. She placed a small suitcase on the floor and sat on the edge of his bed. "How are you, son?" she asked. He put his book aside, as he always did. "Where are you going?" "Son, I have to go. I came to say goodbye. I want you to know that I love you very much, I love you more than my own life." "You'll be fine, I promise you," said Camila, giving him a quick kiss and leaving in a hurry. Bruno didn't understand that she wasn't leaving just for a day, but that his mother was leaving forever. She simply abandoned him. His father was by his side. He calmed him, supported him, and a week later, managed to get the money for the surgery. When Bruno finally took his first step, he decided for himself that he no longer had a mother. He had a father, who had become everything to him. After almost a year of rehabilitation, Bruno was finally able to return to school. His father managed to arrange for him to take express exams from the previous year. Bruno studied hard and managed to return to his class. Time passed, and his father brought Mariana home. Bruno didn't like her, but he was always very polite to her. How could he be angry with his father or tell him what to do? Now, in the present, he approached his car. He stopped for a moment. It had only been 15 days since he had bought the car, and he still hadn't gotten tired of admiring it. As he got into the car, he saw a young woman on the sidewalk looking at him. At first, Bruno thought she looked like someone he knew, but when he looked closer, he dismissed the possibility. What she was wearing had been out of fashion for a long time, so she wasn't someone he knew. The car drove off, and the girl took a photo out of her pocket. The photo was of Bruno when he was very young. She sighed, satisfied, grabbed her bag, and left the block. She would surely return at night. When Bruno came back from work, he was very excited. Everything had gone exactly as he had planned. From that day on, he was the branch manager. Few had achieved this at 29. He parked the car and opened the trunk. He took out a cake and some bottles of champagne. He had called his father from the office and told him to set the table. However, he heard Mariana suggest they could go to a restaurant, but he didn't want to be in a bad mood. He could have gone to a restaurant, but he wanted to be at home with his father, who had been by his side and made every effort to help him recover. Bruno turned around, and there was the same girl from the morning. Up close, she was quite pretty, blue eyes, blonde hair. Maybe they did know each other. He thought of all the possibilities, but nothing seemed right. So he gave up. "Do we know each other?" he asked. "No, we don't know each other," she replied. "Thank God. But I need to talk to you." Bruno raised an eyebrow. The girl was clearly hostile. Maybe he recognized her from his friend's country house, his colleague. They had spent a weekend partying, and to be honest, Bruno didn't remember half of it. "Well, let's talk then. I can give you 5 minutes. I don't need that long. Here's the address where your mother is. She's very sick. If you don't want to help her, at least go visit her. You might not get another chance." Bruno pulled back the hand that had mechanically taken the paper. "First, I don't have a mother," he said. The girl looked directly into his eyes. "You're mistaken, you do, and no matter how much you try to hide from it, she isn't going anywhere." "Fine, be it as it may. I don't want to see her," Bruno replied. "Take her address and remember that not everything in life is exactly as we believe it to be. Goodbye." She handed him a piece of paper and quickly walked away. The night was ruined. He didn't know why he hadn't told his father, probably because he didn't want to ruin his night too. His father didn't deserve that. 2 days passed, and Bruno couldn't stop thinking about the address in his pocket. On Saturday, after another night of uncertainty, he finally decided to go just to look into the eyes of the one who had left him in such a state. The search took a long time. He wandered through the streets of a decaying neighborhood, full of ruined buildings, unable to find what he was looking for. Then he saw her, the girl from the morning. He stopped. "Excuse me, what's your name?" he asked. The girl turned around surprised and smiled. "You came after all." "Yes, I came. I just want to look her in the eye. Can you show me where this damned house is?" "It's right behind you," she replied. Bruno turned and cursed. There was even a sign on the building that he had stubbornly ignored. The young man climbed to the second floor using the old creaky stairs. He raised his hand to ring the bell, then lowered it. Mom. He couldn't remember anything bad about her, just how she had loved him, how she had cried beside his bed, how she had stroked his arm while he pretended to be asleep. He needed to regain his composure. Behind the door was the same woman who had abandoned him out of fear of hardships. His father had convinced her to stay, promising to find money, but his mother didn't want to listen to anyone. Apparently, she had someone more important than her son. The doorbell rang unexpectedly loud. Bruno realized the door was ajar. He entered and immediately heard a voice. "Isabella, is that you?" It was his mother's voice. "No, it's not Isabella." The woman lying on the couch then spoke. "Is it my son, Bruno?" "Yes, it's me." The woman tried to sit up but couldn't. Bruno stood in front of her and couldn't overcome his feelings. He didn't want to help her, he didn't want to touch her. Camila must have realized this. "Son, sit down, there's a chair over there." Bruno sat and looked around. Misery stared at him from every corner, terrible, utter misery. Everything seemed clean, but it felt like he was in a den. A woman was cursing loudly in the street. Bruno's mother smiled slightly. "The neighbors and their confusion are normal here. How are you, son?" Bruno smiled sarcastically. "Don't you think it's a bit late to ask me that?" "Sorry." He felt his mother's gaze on him. Then he noticed a photo of himself as a child on the table next to the couch. It's incredible, what a hypocrite. Now he finally understood. Apparently, her other husband had left her long ago, perhaps without reason or maybe because she was sick in some way. She found out that Bruno was doing well in life and decided to ask him for money. Of course, that explains everything. "Why did you look for me? What do you want? Money? Then stop pretending and acting. Get up. Why don't you at least offer me a coffee?" Camila tried to get up again. She even managed to put her feet on the ground, but had no strength to do more.
She criait silently.
"Sorry, son, I can't get up." The door opened. Isabella entered the room and hurried to Bruno's mother. "Are you crazy? They told you not to get up." The girl made Camila lie down again and turned to Bruno.
What were you doing?
"Why did you let her do that?" "I should have made her lie down again." I understood her plan. She didn't need to create all this drama. She could have just asked for the money and been done with it. Isabella approached him, furious. "Calm down, Isabella, please." "He doesn't know anything," Camila cried inconsolably. Isabella crossed her arms and said, "It's very convenient not to know anything. If you don't know, you sleep better, right? Bruno, you have a good life, so get out of here. Your mother saw you, and that's enough. Both of you get out of here." A weak voice came from the couch where Camila was lying. Isabella turned abruptly, ran to Camila, and shouted at Bruno. "Call an ambulance. Call an ambulance, she has heart problems." He dialed something on his phone and didn't understand anything. Did she really call him just to see him before she died? Probably to ask for forgiveness, and this crazy girl wouldn't let her. The ambulance took Camila, and he followed. He made sure his mother received all the help she needed and asked the doctor, "When can I visit her?" "Tomorrow afternoon. Don't fail to come, the prognosis is reserved." Bruno left the hospital and soon saw Isabella sobbing on a bench near the entrance. He approached and sat next to her. "Why are you crying? The doctor said you could visit her tomorrow." She looked at him with her big, tear-filled eyes. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." "Do you want me to take you home?" "Well, if you can." Bruno left the hospital parking lot. He would have to come back tomorrow to give his mother the opportunity to apologize and calm down, but if she expected to establish a relationship, she wouldn't succeed. They arrived at the familiar buildings. "Which one do you live in?" Isabella, who had remained silent the whole way, said, "I live in the same building as Camila, just a different entrance." So your neighbors? She looked at him with surprise and then smiled. Is that strange for you? Bruno felt embarrassed. No, of course not. It's just that, are you going to see your mother tomorrow? Yes, I promised the doctor I would. At what time, if I may ask? Bruno felt satisfied. Was she in love with him? Well, she dresses modestly, but she has a good body and face. At 3 p.m. Okay, I'll go later. I don't think you'll stay there long. Why later? Bruno thought he had misunderstood something. Isabella had already gotten out of the car, but before closing the door, she said, So I don't run into you. The door slammed. Bruno watched for a while longer. Finally, he shook his head. Isabella was no longer in sight. She must have gone into the building. Bruno pounded the steering wheel with his hands. This is ridiculous. What does she think she's doing? Who does she think she is? He drove home at high speed. Anger boiled in his chest. How could this be possible? His mother had abandoned him when he was sick. She didn't want to take responsibility for caring for him, and now, with the help of that little nag, she was trying to make him feel guilty for something. No way. He wasn't a fool. They could all go to hell. He wasn't even going to the hospital tomorrow. Let them solve their own mess. Bruno was so furious that he didn't see the red light. The sound of tires screeching, a crash, and darkness. He struggled to wake up, or rather, he wasn't asleep but still couldn't wake up. Nothing hurt him. There was a void around him, but he knew he could hear everything. Why couldn't he wake up? He could barely hear the light steps of someone. It was the girl. Yes, it was her, Isabella. He made an incredible effort to open his eyes, looked at Isabella, and then she immediately disappeared. Next, the doctor's face appeared. What's your name?
Bruno.
How old are you?
29.
Perfect. The doctor shone a light in Bruno's eyes, making him close them immediately. Very well, rest now. The man disappeared, and Isabella appeared. I won't stay long. Your family just left. Your stepmother is such an unpleasant woman. How did you live with her? She was all over the place trying to get a document stating that you wouldn't be left disabled after the accident. Your father was trying to calm her down, but she was screaming like a madwoman that she was going to file for divorce. I won't live under the same roof as your disabled son. That doesn't surprise me. I'm even starting to get used to it. To what? Whenever something happens to me, everyone abandons me. You're talking about your mother, right? Isabella's eyes gleamed with anger. She guessed but continued, You shouldn't talk like that. Although, who am I to say this? I thought you had hit your head so hard that it would make some sense to you, but no. You're still where you were. You know, I thought better of you at first. I mean, I expected you to at least try to find out the truth, to know who was responsible. But you... Isabella couldn't find the right word and then just said, I'd better go now. The girl headed to the door. Bruno looked at her and closed his eyes. He never imagined there were people capable of making him lose his temper in 2 minutes. Despite being in poor condition, full of medication, he thought, what a spoiled girl. What is she always talking about? What truth? What is it that I don't know that should make me change my mind about the world? His head ached. Now he wanted to know the terrible secret Isabella always talked about. On the other hand, she could have told him, but no. She made a big drama and fled. Pity for her husband, if she had one. The doctor came to see him at night. How are you? Well, I'm fine. Well, what can I say? It's not that bad. You can sit up and get up slowly. You hit your forehead, but fortunately, you have a strong forehead. Bruno immediately sat up. He felt dizzy, but it was manageable. Doctor, tell me, a woman was admitted here yesterday, right? Yes, her name is Camila. She was admitted to this hospital. How can I find her? The doctor frowned in thought. Weren't you the one who came with her? I was. I took care of her. She's in room 7, the doctor replied. On the opposite corridor. The doctor then said. That's out of the question. You still can't go that far. We'll monitor you for a day or two, then you'll be able to move around freely. The doctor left. Bruno waited another half hour. The hospital was quiet now. He walked slowly to the door and looked outside. There was no one in the hallway, only cheerful voices coming from the nurse's room. Apparently, the girls were chatting. Bruno leaned against the wall and walked to the hallway door. He opened it and stepped into the corridor. He paused for a moment and headed towards the door in front of him. There was no one in the corridor either. The timing was perfect. The patients had eaten, gone to bed, and now the staff could eat and rest too. Room 7 was right in front of him. There was no time to think. He pulled the door towards him. His eyes took a moment to adjust to the darkness. Once they did, he could see his mother clearly. She was lying by the window. The 2 beds were empty and a woman was sleeping at the other end. Bruno, she said. His mother looked at the bandage on his head. What happened to you, son? Nothing important. I hit my forehead. Do you know why I'm here? She shook her head. You have to tell me. Why did you abandon me? I thought I didn't care, but now I realize I want to know. I want to understand who got in your way that made you decide to leave a sick child. Camila was silent for a minute. Then she replied. I didn't abandon you, Bruno. It's just that I had no other choice. Bruno interrupted. Lies. No one forced you to leave. You made that decision on your own. That's not true. Of course it is. I did it. No one forced me.
Bruno sighed.
Just tell me why and I'll leave. Honestly, Bruno felt disappointed. Only now did he realize he had allowed himself to think that he might forgive her once she told her story. Well, not completely, but a little. He wanted to help her with the treatment, maybe with something else. But how could he help someone who had done that to him? The reason was you, she said. I understand, a sick child is a burden. But you had to go somewhere, right? Fine, I'll tell you everything, but it's a long story. I'm not in a hurry, the man said. Camila sighed and closed her eyes. Your surgery was postponed again. I realized that the chances were getting smaller and smaller. There was no money. No money at all. I tried to get a loan, mortgage my apartment, but everywhere they offered so little money that it didn't even cover half of the expenses. 3 months after you were discharged, I started to notice that your father smelled like another woman's perfume, had lipstick stains on his shirt. That's when I realized João wouldn't help. He had distanced himself from everything. He had his own life, separate from ours. I needed to do something as quickly as possible. Bruno looked at his mother, completely confused. She was saying strange things. Dad had always been by their side. He had managed to get that damn amount of money, but Bruno never asked where it came from. Besides, he remembered well that after the surgery, somehow they managed to have a better life. Dad started his small business. Yes, he was never home, but Bruno, though not entirely grown up, was fully aware that his father had to work hard. Continuing, one day, exhausted from begging the banks, I sat in a park and cried. Then someone called my name. I looked up and saw my friend. Things had been so chaotic due to recent events that we hadn't seen each other in almost a year. She sat beside me, and we talked. She was very upset with her father. She was so angry. She said goodbye with these words, "I'll think about it too, and if I find out anything, I'll call you immediately." I don't know if it can be called luck, but just 2 days later, her boss's daughter ran over a man and took his life. She fled the scene. Mariana, seeing that her boss was worried, asked if something had happened. They had a good relationship, and he told her everything. Together, they found a way to solve the problem. She called me that night and said her boss was willing to pay me double the amount I needed for the surgery. I had 1 hour to decide. Her father wasn't home. Mariana said I could use the remaining money to hire the best lawyer I could find to reduce the sentence. Yes, she offered to go to prison in place of the daughter. I accepted. I knew I wouldn't see you for a long time, but you could run as before. Your father only showed up in the morning. I told him everything. He supported me, said he would ensure I received the shortest sentence possible. Your father couldn't attend the trial because he was in the hospital with you. Mariana didn't come either, but I was sure you would get help. And I thought about appealing my case later. I was sentenced to 9 years. I don't know why so many years. Apparently, there were aggravating circumstances, or maybe the man who died was someone important. As you can imagine, there was no appeal, no lawyers, nothing. And I couldn't tell the truth. That would have made things worse. The money was paid, and you were operated on. That woman kept her promise. I was released on parole after 7 years. I went straight to our home. I was eager to see you, but it was Mariana who opened the door for me. Unfortunately, she insisted on keeping things as they were. She was the one your father used to visit at night. I don't blame him, not everyone can handle what we had at home back then. A puzzle formed in Bruno's mind. Money, a better life, Mariana, everything was so simple. So I left. Mariana explained that you hated me and that your father loved that you were a family without me. No one else wanted me. I rented this place in a cheap neighborhood. They don't charge me much. I got a job at the factory. I often came to our building, then to the university. I watched you from afar.
Il criait, il admirait Dieu.
You became a very handsome and intelligent man. I'm so proud of you. I would never have stood in your way. But Amelia, once I told her everything. She was boiling with indignation all the time, and when I got sick, she decided to find you. I was against it, but she's stubborn. Yes, that's true. Bruno was silent for a while, processing the information, getting used to it. Why didn't you tell me everything? Fine, if I hadn't heard, would you have written a letter? But Camila remained silent. Bruno said with difficulty, "Mom, can you hear me?" She was silent again. Bruno looked at the bed. Camila's arm hung limply, her cheeks were wet with tears, her eyes were closed, and her lips were pale, even with a slight bluish tint. "Mom." He touched her, and her other hand also felt like a lifeless rag. Bruno hugged his mother's shoulders. Mom, not now please." He shook her and shouted. Tears streamed from his eyes. Camila's face fell onto the pillow. "Mom." He stepped away from the bed. He didn't want this, he wanted to be there with his mother. The feeling was so strong that he fainted. He woke up in his hospital room. His father was sitting beside him. Bruno looked at him, simply not understanding how he could continue living his life. Why couldn't he live without hating someone? He had hated his mother so much, and now he would have to hate his father too. "Dad?" João woke up, opening his eyes. "Is it all true? Everything Mom told me?" João looked his son in the eyes. "Yes, Bruno, it's all true. I'm sorry, it happened this way. I understand you probably don't want to see me, and you know you're right. I bought a ticket to go to my sister's. Her husband passed away, and it's hard for her to raise her 2 children alone. I'll be living there. I left everything for you, you'll find the papers at home. Mariana went with someone luckier. Goodbye, son, and forgive me if you can. His father walked towards the door. It was as if he expected Bruno to call him. He hoped very much for that, but Bruno didn't. Months later. Son, why are you so nervous? It's your wedding day. You're acting like a child. Camila looked at her son with a smile as he nervously fidgeted with his tie and bow tie. Camila had returned from Germany 2 months ago after undergoing a complicated heart surgery. Bruno had sold his father's business as soon as he learned the surgery was possible. But Bruno was determined, the money was already his. It was hard to recognize Camila, she seemed to have lost 20 years. Mom, how can I not be nervous? It's like you don't know Isabella, she might change her mind 18 times and run away from the wedding, Bruno said. Camila interrupted him. She won't change her mind, my son, she loves you. Really? Do you really think so? Bruno sat next to his mother on the sofa, and she hugged him. Of course. I think she fell in love with you the first time she saw you. But don't tell her I said that, or I'll be in trouble. Mother and son went out. Now they have a family and even family secrets. And if you liked this video, subscribe to the channel, like, comment and share this story.